We are welcoming the audience and the live streaming people to the 17th season of the NTNU Evening. Tonight we ask, will Norway drown in used electric vehicle batteries? How to succeed in recirculation of batteries? The electrification of the transport sector is one of the most important measures on the way to a zero-emission society. Norway has been a leader in terms of political support for electric cars. The ownership share of electric cars is the largest in the world in Norway. It also means that Norway will be among the first countries to experience challenges linked to transport system based on electric mobility on a large scale, which is about recycling batteries and access to critical raw materials. What is the scientific status of sustainable batteries for electric cars, and what can be the possible solutions? Tonight, I should have welcomed Rector Tor Grande. He has fallen sick. 1 hour ago, I got a message, and I got a little letter from him, who asked me to read from this stage. The Sustainable Research Program, which is shorted with the SUSRES at NTNU program, is the largest sustainability research initiative at the university in Norway, constituting nearly 50 PhD and postdoc candidates. The program aims at better systems understanding related to transformative changes for sustainability. All the projects have an interdisciplinary orientation and address the transformative changes needed to achieve a sustainable society. Tonight, you will have the privilege to listen to scientists from the Recycling of Batteries project, which is 1 out of 11 projects in the SUSRES at NTNU program. SUSRES is at the core of NTNU's vision, knowledge for a better world. And then we start introducing the first lecture of this evening. But first, a little intro. The production of electric cars and batteries requires large quantities of raw materials. This leads to increased emissions during the production phase. New questions related to recycling and the supply of critical raw materials force themselves to the fore. The challenges are many and they are complex. It is fundamental to gain a holistic understanding of how to handle end-of-life batteries by studying technical, economic, and design aspects of the battery value chain. To succeed, specialists in engineering science, design, and economics come together through an interdisciplinary research collaboration across 6 departments and 4 faculties at NTNU. Shulolit Bondopadhyay, he is coming from India and is the project leader of NTNU's sustainability research on recirculation of batteries. He is also center manager for the recently established Research Center for Particle Engineering at NTNU and a member of the Gemini Center in Hydrometallurgy, HYPROS. Shulolit received his doctorate in chemical engineering and is an associated professor at the Department of Chemical Engineering. Please, the stage is yours.
Good evening. Today I'm going to talk about electric vehicle car batteries and their recirculation. Electric vehicle car batteries are extremely important for consumers in Norway, primarily because they help in reducing the greenhouse gas emissions and improving the air quality. Let's take an example that you go to buy an electric car. What kind of questions do you ask? Probably you ask, how far can the car go on a single battery charge? Maybe you ask, how long does it take to charge the battery to complete charging? How many of you ask if your car battery, when it has reached its end of life, can be reused, repurposed, or recycled? Should we ask it? Why don't we ask it? Let's say if you're going to ask this question, most of the car dealers will come with an answer that they don't really know if their car batteries can be completely recirculated. Some of them would say that partially their car batteries are recirculated. But if you get an answer that their car batteries are completely recirculated, don't take their answer at the face value. No car batteries currently can be completely recirculated. Let me tell you one more fact. In 30 years from now, some of the raw materials that make up these car batteries, we will run out of them. That will be catastrophic, because these are some of the same materials which make up your phone batteries, laptop batteries. Therein comes our project, WholeLib. In this, we are trying to develop a holistic ecosystem for sustainable repurposing and recycling of car batteries. The battery value chain in Norway has a competitive advantage because of the material sector competence and the renewable energy. The batteries we are working on in the project are mostly designed for a lifetime of 8 to 10 years. So one major question we are asking in the project is, can we extend their use phase by reusing or repurposing end-of-life car batteries? A car battery for a common man evokes emotions of sustainability, cleanliness on one hand, while of anger, fear, safety-related issues on the other hand. Leander is, in his PhD, working on understanding consumer perspectives on repurposed car batteries, and he's going to talk about that later in the evening. Let's say we are able to repurpose or reuse our car batteries, but a time will come when the car batteries would not be able to store much more charge. Then comes in the concept of recycling. One of the main drivers for this is that these car batteries contain a lot of materials. By locking them in the use phase, you will not be able to further use them for new batteries or for other products. A typical car battery contains lithium, nickel, manganese, cobalt, graphite, plastics, so on and so forth. However, if you are thinking that you can store these car batteries, it's a big safety issue. A typical car battery weighs almost the same as the people sitting in a 5-seater car. So if you're going to talk about the numbers, the number of car batteries that would be available at the end of this decade would completely fill up the Gibraltar Islands in the UK. So there is no way but to go for recycling of not only different components, but especially lithium. Lithium is an important component of lithium-ion batteries, although it is needed around 2% by weight, but a car battery can't go without it. And there is a challenge immediately about the lithium. It's about the distribution of lithium worldwide. Almost 90% of the lithium can be found in Australia, in Chile, and Argentina, which makes Europe the second largest importer of lithium in the world, although there are some mines in Spain and Portugal. If you were to take by numbers the amount of car batteries sold in 2017, we would have already used up 10% of the lithium from the Portuguese mines. So there is no way but to go ahead with recycling. Further, the European Union has made a prediction that there would be an increase in the lithium demand by almost 16-fold by the end of the decade. Coupled with that, the new battery regulation that was launched in 2023 would also require very ambitious recycling targets. Having said all this, recycling is still a challenge. Why so? First of all, it's the cost associated. The cost of the recycled products should be lower than what the initial raw materials are, which is just not the case right now. As I told you before, these car batteries are designed for 8 to 10 years, which means we just don't have enough volumes that are ready for making the process more economic. But the most difficult challenge is the recycling technology. Currently, in most of the industrial processes, the battery parts are thrown into a furnace, and we lose the lithium in that process. Although there are some methods and processes being researched, these are not based on circular and sustainable principles. So in our project, we are trying to take out lithium from the lithium-ion batteries by using specific chemicals which can be recycled. Usman is going to talk on this later on this evening. Just taking out lithium is not enough. Therefore, in this project, we are also looking at taking out the other metals from our lithium-ion batteries. A PhD at the Department of Material Science at NTNU is working on this sub-project, where she is trying to develop high-temperature processes and aqueous water-based routes in order to make a metallic product which can be directly used in battery production. Almost all the processes do not work on recovering graphite. The main reason for that is the cost. The metals are much more expensive than the graphite in the batteries. But with new targets of recycling set forth by the regulations in 2023, we need to take out graphite also. Another PhD from the Department of Geoscience and Petroleum Engineering is working on selectively taking out graphite using environmentally benign chemicals, and at the same time also taking out some of the metals. I think by now I've convinced you that indeed recycling is the way forward, but how do we evaluate repurposing or recycling, which way to go for? Is it just based on the technology, economy, or a more holistic overview? Saad, who is going to talk later, is trying to evaluate these different alternatives for developing sustainable business models. So I think I've been able to convince you that repurposing or recycling is indeed important when you go next time to buy car batteries. And the fantastic presentations that are going to follow after me will further convince you that when you leave this room tonight, you'll be thinking that living a life with modern luxury does come with huge responsibility, not only for yourself, your near and dear ones, those who are not in your vicinity, across borders, for the economy, and for the environment at large. Thank you.
Thank you, Shulolit. Then we proceed, and we'll invite the next lecturer, Saad Ahmed. He comes from a small hill in Pakistan called Abbottabad. His PhD examines how to make batteries last longer. The exponential growth of electric vehicles in Norway will result in a large amount of discarded EV lithium-ion batteries in the future. Reusing the batteries for other purposes may possibly extend the life of the batteries, as we heard, and even maybe delay their recycling. Success depends on new sustainable business models. Saad explores current and new business models for used batteries in a Norwegian and EU context. He obtained his bachelor's degree in business administration in Pakistan and came to Norway for his master's degree in innovation and technology management at the university in southeast Norway. Please, Saad, stage is yours.
Thank you, Rani, for inviting me. Hi everyone, I'm Saad. Before we start, let's have a little exercise. Have you ever thought of a really cool idea? Like, for example, my niece wants to build solar cruise ships when she grows up. You can raise your hands. Yeah. But have you been able to make this idea into reality? A product, a service, perhaps? Raise your hands again. The arms have put down considerably. But you're not alone. Almost 90% of the ideas never leave the brain. And almost majority of the startups never make it. Why is that? It's because making a business work is really, really hard. But there have been success stories as well. Netflix, Kahoot, Airbnb, Uber are all examples. And if you analyze them closely, they all have a business model that works. Let's go back a little in time. When I was a little kid, my father used to take me to these cassette rental shops where we used to rent out or buy movies for a short amount of time. So that was one kind of business model in which the company was providing services or value by giving us physical products in the form of cassettes in this case. And we would in turn give them cash. But now this doesn't happen anymore. It's because the way businesses work has changed. So now we can just go online, subscribe to an online streaming service, and get access to all the movies and shows that we want. So the way businesses provide services has changed. Yes, because of the technological advancements that we have seen over the years, but also because of business model innovations that have supported them. Let's imagine a box and all the elements there. Let's put your idea into this box and the elements as well. For example, revenue streams, delivery channels, stakeholders, users, profit considerations, partnerships, and environmental consideration. Now, this box can be named as a sustainable business model. And once you pass your idea through this box, it has the capability to turn into a sustainable business venture or something that is real. So what a sustainable business model does is it transforms your idea into something that is tangible or real. Now you'd be wondering, why am I telling you all about these boxes and stuff? Well, let me ask you a question again. How many of you have ever driven an EV, an electric vehicle? Raise your hands. So yeah, many. I always forget that I'm in Norway, so lots of EVs. And have you ever considered what does an EV battery looks like? How heavy is it? How big it is? Is it this big? Is it this big? Well, it's really big, as you can see here. But comparatively, it can be as heavy as 2 Yamaha grand pianos. One is standing right there. And remember that once a battery reaches 70 to 80% of its capacity, it has to be taken out of the vehicle because it no longer satisfies the range. The International Energy Agency projects that around 350 million EV stock is expected globally by 2030. And Norway is way ahead of the curve. Almost 8 out of 10 cars last year new cars sold were EVs. That means that we'd be facing a huge crisis because once these 350 million batteries come to end of life, there's going to be a huge chunk out there. Now, if you put them all of these together, these batteries together, they can cover the area of almost as big as Alicante, Spain. But what we have to do now is think about how we can make these batteries prolong their lives. As we know that the recycling of these batteries is not sustainable or efficient enough as of yet. One of the things that we can do to prolong the life of the battery is repurpose them or reuse them in different applications other than the car once their battery is taken out of the vehicle. different kind of applications come here. Like, for example, using them in household storage, for example, as a backup. Leandro will talk more about it in the next presentation. Or they can be used in industrial storage, like a grid system, which is more batteries involved in there. So we do have the technical expertise to produce these kinds of second life applications, but you don't see them commercially available so far. And why is that? How do we turn a business idea into a reality? Remember the box? Sustainable business models. This is the core of my research, where I try to figure out what kind of business models and stakeholders exist in the EV battery value chain in the Norwegian and EU context. And then I try to forecast what kind of business models are likely to succeed in the future. And also develop sustainable sustainable business model innovations that can make the battery recircularity more sustainable in the future. I do this by conducting literature reviews, surveys, industrial visits, stakeholder interviews, and mapping. There are already multiple business models existing in the market. For example, we can take the best practice model, which is the 4R. It consists of a Nissan Leaf battery, in which they have a cooperation with another company. So what they do is they take these batteries back that have been used and refabricate them into other second life products and then resell them to the market. Or we can have a simpler business model in which Batteries, a German startup, source their batteries from Mobilize that have been used and make their own second life products. In this case, Lego-type stacked batteries that can be made according to the energy demand of the customers. But there are multiple challenges that come with these business models that can be technical, economical, and social, or environmental. Let's build on this business model. For example, if an EV manufacturer takes the used batteries and then sells them to the repurposer, that means both of these business models are working together in some way, in which the repurposer is sourcing the batteries from the EV manufacturer. But there's a challenge of battery availability here. Imagine this EV manufacturer reconsiders their business model and starts investing in their own repurposing facility. So what they do is that they invest in the infrastructure, hire new workforce, and starts repurposing the batteries themselves, which could be a good idea for them because they're essentially creating kind of like a closed loop, which might be beneficial environmentally. But what it does is that it cuts down the supply of batteries to the battery repurposer, essentially creating economic and social adversities for the battery repurposer. So in a way, both these business models interact and build innovations that can be positive or negative. In my PhD, what I want to do is see how we can put these repurposed these second life batteries into this box, the business model box, and see how we can help businesses create battery recircularity in a more sustainable way. Thank you.
Thank you, Saad. The next PhD candidate you will meet is Leander Pantelatos. He comes from Germany. His research concerns the reuse of lithium-ion car batteries, and he examines the user's perspective in the residential context. Large car batteries have a lot of capacity left when they are replaced. Can they be used to store, for example, cheap electricity in homes? What risk do such batteries pose indoors? What is needed for people to feel confident about such solutions? Leander has a background in both mechanical engineering and industrial design, which he studied at NTNU. Leander is a PhD in the Department of Design at NTNU. Please, Leander, stage is yours.
Thank you, Randy. So, while a big part of the project is looking at the numbers, the chemistry, the structures, and even business models of lithium-ion batteries, my project is about the user perspectives for repurposing lithium-ion batteries in the household context specifically. So I bet there are many questions hanging in the air right now. Why is the user even important? Well, the user is actually the main character during the use phase of a product or a service, and the one that has to live with it for long. I bet you remember last time something didn't quite work to your expectation. It might have been looking something like this, where you simply wanted to throw the thing out of the window and get rid of it and see it crash on the floor. That is usually the way users punish a bad product or design. They simply stop using it, if they can. We also have a more recent example from also quite local. Here in the middle part of Norway, Helseplattformen, a new journal system was introduced, and it turned out it wasn't really efficient to use, and I bet a lot of the doctors really feel like the poor guy on the previous slide. So these are just some small examples to show that it is really important to actually put the user in the center when designing new products and services. And this is also where design comes in. Back in the day, design, I guess, was mostly known for creating beautiful stuff. Glasses, chairs, even cars. Some ugly ones also, of course, but the design field has now transformed a lot. And the designers today are usually the specialists on knowing the user and the needs of the user. So, being it the context, the needs, what kind of behaviors are there, what values does the user have, and also what problems does the user face when having to deal with a product or a service that needs to be accounted for within the product. So going back to this battery question, what can you then use an old car battery in your house for? Some examples from the household context are here. I guess a lot of people know or have get acquainted with the high and fluctuating energy prices recently. And one idea is that if you have a battery in your home, you can actually use that to charge when the electricity price is low, and then use that energy later on when the peak has come. This doesn't only save money, but you can also, by this, relieve the grid at peak times. And this electricity could then also be used for other stuff in society. If you are lucky enough to have a solar panel on your roof, you can also use that to store electricity from the sun in the battery and then use it later on when the sun is gone. But also as a backup mechanism. Like when a storm comes and a tree falls down and chops you off of the grid, you can still turn on the light at night. But then talking about using an old car battery in your home, how long would it even last then? This is a figure from research, and it's a general life of a lithium-ion battery. So we have the first life in the car, we have the battery health as one, as the y-axis, and then the x-axis, as we call it, we have the cycle number, so how often a battery is charged and discharged. And as you can see here, after the end of life, there are still a substantial amount of cycles left until the knee point. And the knee point, that is then the point where you shouldn't use the battery anymore, then it can actually become dangerous and turn into fire and even explosions. So that's a tricky thing. But how long is then this distance between the end of use until the knee point? In some studies, it has turned out this could be 5 years. In other studies, they have calculated around 15 or even 20 years, depending on what kind of chemistry it is, but also how hard it was used in the first life in the car. But this knee point can be a bit scary. And this also adds a new dimension into the pure usability of things. It's also not about just how to use a product, but also how safe it is perceived, and also trust comes in. One example from 2016 was the introduction of the Samsung Galaxy Note 7. It was a smartphone, but it was designed with a battery error in it. So some of the devices did actually explode, leaving a huge shock on the market. Many users refrained from buying smartphones overall, and the whole market went actually down that year. This is, of course, a very small battery in a smartphone. So how would this then look if you actually have a huge battery weighing like as much as a family in your house? And if you look at the news, you also have these stories about batteries really catching fire and stuff like this. So would you then be happy with the battery in your basement, an old car battery where your loved ones lives and sleeps? So there are certainly many questions to investigate here when introducing such a solution to the market based on old car batteries. This is not only about safety and trust, it's also practical questions like, where would you buy it? Who would you buy it from? Are there any guarantees that needs to be given? Is it better to actually not buy, but rather lease? So you have someone else taking responsibility for it in case something turns wrong. How would that look? So these are some of the very practical questions I want to investigate. And what I'm doing now in my research, I firstly tried to look both near and far to see, okay, what kind of solutions is being worked on today, what are the perspectives later on. A big part of my project is, of course, the user perspectives, not only like the context, the needs and so on of a single user, but also at large, what kind of narratives and stories are told around batteries in society, and what perspectives are really important to implement in a product or service. Later, there will also be an investigation of existing products. There are some examples on the market already, but it's more a niche. So it will be very interesting to see, okay, how will these user insights I gather compare to the existing products that are out there, and maybe this can also turn into some new innovations and so on. And lastly, I think the overall goal is really to get the user perspectives into the then hopefully circular value chain of the lithium-ion batteries, which we are working for. So at the end, I hope that my insights can inform the value chain and also create an opportunity for the end user to take a bit of responsibility for this pile of batteries that are out there, but also having the chance and opportunity to take part of the bigger energy transition. Thank you.
Thank you, Leander. More and more questions are rising up. Usman Salem, he comes also from Pakistan. He took his master's degree in chemical engineering at NTNU, where he researched the recycling of the metal lithium from lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. Inspired by the subject, he is now taking his PhD at the same institute where he is researching the development of solvents for lithium extraction. The goal is to recover lithium for repeated use in new batteries. Please, Usman.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. So I work with recycling of lithium from electric vehicle lithium-ion batteries. But before we dive into that, let's have a look on why should we recycle lithium in the first place. So lithium demand in 2022 was around 0.5 million tons. But now it is projected to increase by 8-folds to around 4 million tons by 2030. And then out of this demand, around 6% is projected to be supplied by recycling. But then here we can ask ourselves a question, that how much lithium from recycling was provided last year? 0% by a European Union report. But now EU has put in some new directives to increase the recycling of lithium from batteries by 50% in 2027 and then up to 80% by 2030. But then again, why this number in 2023 was so low? Is it that difficult to recycle lithium-ion batteries? To answer that, let's have a look on schematic of a lithium-ion battery cell. So we have a copper foil and anode particles are coated on it, and one of the most commercialized anode material is graphite. On the other side, we have an aluminum foil and cathode particles are coated on it, and one of the most commercialized cathode material is lithium, nickel, manganese, and cobalt oxide. And both these foils are separated by a plastic sheet of separator. And these foils and the plastic sheet is rolled to make a cylindrical lithium-ion battery cell. So now we see that there are many elements to recover when we want to recycle a lithium-ion battery cell, and this makes them a very heterogeneous material. But we can hit gold. How? So in current processes, the big electric vehicle battery packs are first dismantled up to module or cell level, and then they are fed into a crusher to get a fine powder. After that, this powder undergoes a physical separation process, for example, sieving. And the aim here is to recover as much iron, aluminum, and copper as possible. So then the result is a very fine powder which is concentrated in anode and cathode material. And this powder is also called black mass or black gold in the market these days. So then, how can we recycle lithium from this black mass? So for this, there are many possible process routes, where in current processes, lithium is recovered at a later stage after the recovery of other metals, for example, nickel, manganese, and cobalt. But now, this trend is shifting, where in new processes, first lithium is recovered from the black mass so that we have a pure lithium product which can be used in batteries or in other applications. And then we recover all the other metals after that. So today, we will have a look on an example from my research where we try to recycle lithium at a very early stage in a black mass recycling process. So the first step here is to selectively separate lithium from the black mass solids in an aqueous solution. And for that, I use oxalic acid. Oxalic acid is an organic acid and can be produced from plants. And this selective solubilization of lithium process is called leaching. So after this reaction, we have a filtration step where we recover graphite with all the other metals as solids in the filter cake. And we have a clear solution where we have now lithium in abundance represented as the big fish here, but we still have some impurities in the form of iron, aluminum, manganese, and copper, and cobalt. So then how we can isolate lithium from all these other metal ions here? For that, let's go fishing. So imagine this is me sitting in my boat in a lake or a pond, and I want to capture the big fish, lithium. But the thing is that if I lower my fishing hook here in this water, all the fishes want to eat that bait. But I don't want that. I only want to capture the big fish. So then what can I do? I build an adjacent pond, represented as the green color here. And I try to optimize the conditions in this pond in a way that first, the green pond and the blue pond, they don't mix with each other. These liquids are immiscible. And also, I try to optimize the environment there that only the big fish, lithium, wants to come into the green pond. But does that actually happen? Sadly, no. As it turns out, all the small fishes, they want to come to the green pond even before the big fish, lithium. So then, what can I do? I release a shark in the blue pond by the name of sodium. And this shark comes from a solution of sodium hydroxide. And as it turns out, this shark wants to eat all the fishes except the big fish, lithium. So then all the other fishes, they swim for their life and come near the surface. And there I am, sitting in my boat to catch them all. And this process is essentially called precipitation or crystallization, where we just add a solution of sodium hydroxide and all the small fishes or metal ions, they crystallize and turn into solids, which are then separated by filtration. So now we have only the big fish lithium and the shark sodium in the blue pond. And the big fish lithium can take its time and come to the green pond. And as it turns out, the shark sodium does not like the environment in the green pond and wants to remain in the fresh water in the blue pond. And this is how we separate lithium from other metals in a typical black mass recycling process, according to my current research. So now we have captured one goldfish. Can we hit more gold? Yes, we can. And that is by designing a new type of material in the green pond and optimizing the conditions there in a way that we don't have to hire the services of any shark. And only the big fish lithium should come into that green pond. And this is essentially the main aim of my PhD, which is to develop a novel solvent which can recover lithium selectively over other metals. But then again, how easy is that? So for this, there are many things to consider. We just saw that the commercial solvents are highly efficient to separate lithium over sodium selectively. But I want to improve their selectivity to separate lithium over other metals, for example, nickel, manganese, and cobalt, and also improve their recyclability and environmental impact. And hopefully, my PhD project will achieve that. And in doing so, we will contribute towards achieving the ambitious lithium recycling targets which are put in by the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you, Usman. I think all of us will remember this fishing fairy tale. Good story. Now we will have an intermission in about 10 minutes, and we will meet here again in 10 minutes, and then we will have all participants on stage, and we will have questions and deepening into these issues. Please. Ja, nå har vi hatt en kvartett her, som har gitt oss virkelig et veldig helhetlig... No, sorry, I have to go to English, of course. We have had 4 different perspectives. Shulalit with the overall perspective, and deeping into the 3 specific challenges that you are working on. So now, you have already posed a lot of questions, but I think I will just start with a few questions from the audience. I guess a lot of you now have talked about it, and you have some good questions. So please, do we have people with a microphone? Yeah, one here. Yes, one. It takes some minutes to recap.
You. Hello. I have a question to Leander. and that is car batteries usually have lithium-ion batteries, whereas they have a negative property of a tendency for thermal runaway, right? That's why usually in households you install lithium iron phosphate batteries, because they are a lot easier to handle. How do you intend, or do you have any ideas how to mitigate this?
Yeah, you're basically you're also talking about this, the fire and explosion part, and yes, that's indeed a thing. There are some solutions out there, or some ideas at least, from also some of the startups that I have investigated. And one startup, they investigated if they could put like this battery in the garden, under the ground, for instance, so away from the basement. A very interesting concept I've also seen is making a cage for it, which then is certified, for instance, that it can also withstand some severe fires and explosions. And this would then also maybe be connected to the pipe of the house. So if there is a fire and anything, the gases can actually escape that way. So these are just some concepts. They haven't really been implemented to my knowledge, but that could be a thing. But yeah, I also see very much that lithium iron phosphate batteries are more used for the second, or in households in general. But also in the car industry, I think these kind of batteries are also more and more used, as they are cheaper than the other ones with more precious metals. So I think at the end it will be possible, or there will also be a lot of that, the safer kind of batteries to implement.
Yeah, some of you other would like to comment on the same issue? Not specifically, no. Okay, we take two other questions before we start here, please.
A bit along the same lines, I was wondering, because these other battery chemistries that are coming along to maybe replace the lithium-ion battery technology, could you maybe say something about what's the prospect there? When are they coming along, and to which extent will they maybe take over? And if this project and all its findings will then be relevant, or to which extent are you able to use the platform of all the knowledge that you're building up for new chemistries coming along?
Who will lead?
Yeah, maybe I can start, and then others can add on their perspectives. I think it's a very good question regarding what will happen when these different kinds of batteries come in. I'll take that first. As is predicted that 2025 we'll already have the sodium-ion batteries in the market. And one reason for that being implemented is also the abundance of sodium compared to the lithium. I think the prospects that we are developing, not on the technology front, but at least on the holistic ecosystem of how to deal with such kind of batteries from their start until their end, and also after their end of life, these tools should be usable for other kind of batteries. And I think, as Saad presented also, this sustainable business models, they have very many components that go into that box. And some of these components would be important for one kind of battery chemistry, whereas not one for the other. So I think the tools and framework, that would be definitely useful. And then by that time, I forgot the first question, which was about...
to which extent will lithium-ion batteries be dominating or be replaced, maybe?
Yeah. So does anyone else want to answer that? I mean, what we see is that LFP batteries are quite on the rise. They have been already quite on the rise in China, but also in Europe and Norway. There are many gigafactories that will produce LFP type of cells. So that will come in, or that have already started coming in. Sodium-ion batteries will come in around 25. Then there is also zinc-ion batteries for even larger storage purposes. So I think what we at least have been discussing in the project team is that we would start getting more and more mixed stream wastes and more complicated wastes coming out unless there is more work on the repurposing. But also then all batteries will probably not make to the repurposing stage. Depending on, we saw some numbers in state of charge, but there are also numbers of state of health and state of risk, which are typical numbers to report for such batteries. And on that side, I think what we are still in kind of maybe in the initial phase of that analysis through Saad's project and also Leander's projects on what can be repurposed, but not all batteries will qualify through the whole process.
Just to add on it a little bit, so some of the chemistries are not really fit for repurposing of the batteries itself, like sodium-ion batteries, and it's, for example, cost-wise, it would be better to just recycle them straight away instead of going through the repurposing and second life phase. So these are some of the problems that may come along in the future, especially with the cost-wise. We see that the cost of the batteries or the price of the batteries, the new batteries, is decreasing, while the price of the second-use batteries, because of the labor cost and other things that go into it, the price of the second-use batteries is increasing. So that also creates a lot of challenges with, is repurposing really viable, economically at least? Yeah.
Would you give some more comment or no? Is there a third question here? Yeah, please.
What is the main difference between making battery 50 years ago compared with the process which is produced today? Is one question. And the other one, what is the most critical nickel, lithium element to produce? What is the most, where we have to change, where we have to find some other elements to make the batteries? Did you understand my questions?
Yeah, the most critical raw material, metal. Yeah.
Okay, I can take all the responsibility. So I guess in terms of the critical metals, lithium was not on the list of critical metals until 2020. So, and that is one of the reasons we think, and also the research says, that there has been much less focus on recovering lithium out of lithium-ion batteries. The second thing, when it comes to criticality, I think it's more driven by cost currently than anything else. But there are a lot of concerns regarding mining activities, let's say for cobalt. There is a lot of concern around that. So the new battery chemistries that are coming up, the ones I think we are working on are primarily nickel, manganese, and cobalt in almost the same ratio. But when it comes to the new batteries that are hitting the market and is being used are very high nickel content. So there is already a focus on reducing the amount of cobalt, for example, in these batteries. I guess that answers your second question. And the first was... how has the process changed? Yeah, 50 years back. I have to go back in time. But I guess none of us here are working too much on the battery production side. But one thing, the chemistry, I think, has not changed too much since when it was invented. It's more about making these batteries lightweight, making batteries smaller in size, what can you pack, also trying to reduce the total amount of energy that you put in a battery production process. Could we reduce that? So these are some of the driving forces, but I'm not sure if there are more that we could add here. I don't think at this point the battery design is what we would like to change is how these batteries are designed. And there are a lot of discussions going on in the EU now, but I think the big players are not interested right now to stick to one design. I mean, you will be aware that this USB-C cable in the EU took quite a lot of time before now you can have just one cable that you can use for charging every device. The batteries legislations are far away from that, where there would be one specific design. And we are not yet there. That requires a lot of optimization. So I think the chemistry has not changed. The design of the batteries per se to make them more lightweight, more flexible in a way, that has changed. And maybe the new batteries that are coming up from the design perspective, you could replace some of the cells. If you find out that one cell is defective, ideally would be able to replace that cell. Or if you found out that one module in a battery pack is defective, you could replace that module pack, like the example of Batteries company in Germany. There you can stack the modules as South presented, the ones which are working, and the ones which are not working, you can throw them, not in the furnace, but for recycling by our project, for example. Yeah. So I guess those are the some design considerations coming in the battery, but per se the chemistry has not changed drastically in lithium-ion batteries.
Thank you. Then we take a little bit here on stage. I think that the business models, because if I would like to dig a little bit in that, because we see from many aspects of society, if things are not in a way sustainable or acceptable in an economic aspect, it very soon dies or are fading out. And you said in your box you had a lot of things, and among them stakeholders. Who are the most important, and who has the veto right to say yes or no to everything? Where is the power? How is the powers working in this Czech game?
Well, it also depends on a lot on where you're considering the repurposing of the batteries, at least. Like, for example, some countries have stricter regulations, some countries have linear regulations. But I think in my research for now, I think the policymakers play a really big role in how the companies can actually produce these repurposed batteries for secondary use. And that not only means economic considerations, but also considering multiple stakeholders, but also environmental and social considerations that should be taken into account as well. Like, for example, these business models have also negative effects on other things as well. These are called rebound effects. Like, for example, think about the primary use of the batteries. So in Norway, they say that it's really good that we have adopted a lot of EVs, but it also means that people have generally kept the gasoline cars and bought another EV car. So instead of having one car, they now have two cars. So it has eventually created a more sustainability problem than it was meant to solve. So these rebound effects also take place, and policymakers hold one of the most powerful aspects here in how they develop the policies and regulations about using these batteries.
Mm. So you say that the new EV vehicles that made that we have even much more cars now than before the electric cars.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm.
Interesting.
So there's a need to like phase out the old system as well. It's not just about creating new innovations, but we also have to phase out the old system to develop sustainability, as you say, more holistically. Mm. Yeah.
Yeah. Can I add one thing? Yes, please.
I think another important stakeholder, which also Leander presented, is the user. Mm. I think we are working on that part of the value chain where we take for granted that there are two cars or there are these cars available, but it's not important to have a high rate of consumption. So that is an aspect which I think also maybe not a project opinion, but a personal opinion, that there should be more focus on the consumption rate of everything and not just focus on that you have it, how would you get rid of it or how would you reuse it. So the user, I think, has also a very important role in this business model development on that I don't want to buy a car from this company because of this and this reasons. Right now, I think in my example, I also say people are looking for charging time, the cost, of course, how far you can go, and other considerations. But it doesn't necessarily come where the materials have come from. And that the EU is working quite a lot on this battery passport, whereby you would be able to track down everything in your car battery, where it has come from. Has it come from a mine in Congo, or has it come from a reused battery in Philippines, for example? So that would be, I think, the user perspectives are very important in the business model.
With what you say now, then you are raising an ethic perspective here, which we haven't touched until now, because then we talk about the responsibility. If I shall buy car A or B, do I want to support the mining and children working in the mine in some country, or should it be a recycled something? Is this what you mean to, or is this
a part of that?
The consequence of what you say?
Yeah, a part of that is true, but then in certain cases, I think by helping, I wouldn't say helping mining more metals, but helping certain societies and economies which have that as the only option of earning, and banning that is also not fair or ethical. So ethical part comes in, and I think they are the experts who are going to work on that in their projects at least.
Yeah.
Just want to add on it is that these stakeholders do not operate like separately. They have their interactions as well. Like, for example, how a user behaves or behaves towards batteries, for example, also influences how a policy is made. Or how the policy is made is also influenced by how the user behaves. So these are interactions that also take place between the stakeholders within the value chain. Yeah.
So you mean by that to say that all of us can, in a way, also have some vote here, or make pressure, or demand, or stop demanding for things? It will be a force in the big puzzle.
In my personal opinion, I think so. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many in this audience are thinking about where the lithium or where the raw materials in the car comes from? Did many reflect on that before? Yeah. Yeah. I think maybe this is a question that I haven't read in a newspaper about this until now. But I read about models that have been developed for future scenarios for raw material use in batteries. And the main conclusion is that the greatest potential to reduce emissions from battery materials does not lie in the technology solutions, but in measures that encourage a more efficient use of the resources. And that's what we may be talking about now. And these measures involve changes in lifestyle or social structure. You know this, of course, you know. Yep. We know. Do we know? Because I think maybe, because if something is going to change, where is the bottom that will give the best effect? Who has the vote or the veto or the way of making a strategy? Because you said the demand. Can we do something? What do you think about making a strategy for diminishing the demand of 1 or 2 cars or whatever concerning the batteries? Is that possible to think of?
Of course, I think this is, as mentioned, very much up to the user also. And I also feel that as we are a technical university and so on, we are very often focused on the technology. And also if there is not enough of a resource, we find new ways maybe to get enough of everything. And so it's very much on the provision of resources. But I think the discussion is often lacking also, okay, what about the demand? How can we actually live sufficient with what we have and also reduce the need for example, electricity and so on. And yes, I've also back in the day read a lot of newspapers that actually the designers, when they are designing a new product, they can actually be responsible for about 80% of all the emissions that turns out of this product at the end. So yes, there is of course a great power in that hand, but it's also, I don't think there is like one person you can say has the veto or so. I think it's very interconnected, and also the design is a part of a bigger system. But also coming back on, okay, how can we actually reduce things? And for instance, with a car, you can say, okay, is it necessary that everyone has a car in Norway? Could there be some car sharing apps or services? Could it be that you exchange your car with an e-bike, for instance, or other means of transportations, basically? So, and this is also very much for the designer, basically, to create good products and services that would accommodate such a thing.
Yeah. And also build better business models that can help make that product or service available to the people in a good way.
To make this as a product that can be easy used. Yeah,
Yes.
please.
Yeah. So about the material demand that you asked, I think it also relates back to the question of battery chemistries. So for example, sodium-ion batteries coming in, so it also depends on the users, that are they more informed about, is it actually sustainable, or how are they contributing towards it? Because for example, sodium-ion batteries, they are not as energy dense or have that much range compared to lithium-ion batteries. But if someone wants to buy a more powerful EV, that is only lithium. But if they opt for sodium, let's say to drive in a city or something, in a way that will ease the demand on, for example, lithium batteries itself. So I think it also falls on the users what they choose to do.
But it might also mean that we have 3 cars now: one gasoline, one sodium, one lithium.
That is possible.
You have really been diving into the models, yeah. Because and then you are touching into the psychology of the human being. Are we always hunting where the fence is lowest to jump over? What? Shall we involve the audience once more? What do you think about these perspectives? Is it possible for us to, if you talked about the regulations and the conscience about the use and the raw materials, and that we have to in a way change our lifestyle and our expectations, all being brought around for every cost? Yeah, we have one here. Good. Come.
Hi. Yes, so I don't think it's in this society today that it's so clear that we necessarily know about the choices we have, that there is also a limit on how we are informed, and with social media upon all this too, this is also a barrier. How are you supposed to compete with misinformation, for instance, which is also a challenge? So it's another layer to this problem. So yeah.
Yeah. More comments? Here we have one in the first row.
I think another interesting perspective on this is, well, I was lucky enough to join some of these guys to Japan, and I'm not talking about the environmental impact of the flight and everything that we do all the time, but we had the opportunity to visit the Nissan 3 or 4R plant where they do all the repurposing of the batteries, where we learned. There was one picture that Saad showed from that visit, and one of the things that I asked there was something I was wondering about for already a long time. I've been driving a Nissan Leaf for I think 8 years now, and when I start the car, and then I get this question, do you give Nissan permission to record data on the way it's used? And knowing and understanding from the presentations from these Japanese people there, they're saying information about the state of health and how the battery has been used is very important for their process. In fact, we learned that one of the key things that makes a business competitive or not is the knowledge about how to assess the state of health of a battery. That's where they were telling us everything, but not that, because that's where the competitive advantage is. Okay, I'm digressing slightly. But I was then asking, so is this important or not? And it was interesting to know that yes, they say it's not essential for us to know, because we know a lot about the state of health of the battery when it is actually analyzed in the factory, but you giving us permission and giving up some freedom, right? That will help us better to assess the state of health of the battery. It will make the process faster, make it cheaper, and it will increase the likelihood that a battery basically can be repurposed. But then I thought, okay, that means that I have to sacrifice my sense of security, that Nissan will not misuse the information where I've been, because sometimes I drive places I don't want people to know that I've been driving there, right? So this kind of user perspective is also very important to take into account, and for example, Leander's research, because all these kind of, non-rational but maybe more emotional aspects need to be factored in, and that also factors into SaaS research, where you look at, okay, so how can you develop a business model and a relation with your customer that kind of establishes this trust. So there's many things that come into the...
And this relation, it means they will track us down every time we take the car.
You better watch out.
Yeah.
But Casper, you always press no when Nissan Leaf asks you.
I always press no, and I must admit, after this visit, I still do, because I think my privacy is more important.
Because now you know.
than the sustainability of this earth, in that sense.
Yeah.
I compensate in other ways. Yeah.
But is this good or bad? Is this intruding really, really important borders, or is this useful, or what shall we? Shall we press no or yes?
There's no final answer, because this is what researchers need to find out. For who is this important? For who is this less important? Yeah. And then maybe you need to diversify in terms of your business model to make sure that you can actually, develop solutions for those who don't mind. In a different way, so that you can get most data out of people in a way that is legal and ethical, which is not the same always. So.
You raised your microphone, and one of you also gave a sign here. Was it you, Osman? No? Okay.
No,
yeah?
I was just not referring directly to that or responding to that, but I was to your general question about this policymakers. I think what Saad mentioned is extremely important, I think, in this value chain. Because of the fact, as we have seen, lithium a few years back was not an important metal when you talk to big players, like industrial players, let's say. The moment the regulations came in and that it put up on a critical raw material list, which is just a document that is more respected than, let's say, public opinion in some cases, but also coming through that, suddenly there is a huge impact on the technology engineering sector on we want to get lithium out. I mean, if you look at the Norwegian battery value chain, some of these gigafactories, they even didn't think about involving or introducing recycled materials into their production process, because primarily there are 5 gigafactories in Norway as we speak that are being built. But none of them initially, when they started, had ambitious plans of having recycling targets. But now with the 2023 new battery regulations that came in, there is no way out. So if they want to get this product out in the market, they need to have at least certain percentage of their feed coming from recycled products. So that's kind of, I think that, and this is something we have also said before from the project platform as well as earlier, that regulations and directives, I think, make the users more aware. And you can also think about GDPR, how it has changed so much of the way information was shared earlier than how it is shared now. So yes, privacy is important. Yeah. Sustainability is also important. But which is good or bad, I don't think there is a single answer.
But the GDPR example that the person where they track all the personal data about us and pictures and so on, but that was possible and it has had a great impact. So you feel that it's possible to have this as an impact in a positive way.
I think the battery passport is expected to make a huge impact. At least that's what we hear in the news and read. As much as maybe not the misinformation that Jonas was talking about, but there is definitely a lot of, I think, directions on the battery passport side.
Thank you. You, Cyril, will you give comments or anything? No? Was there one hand more I saw? A bit in the dark. Yeah, take.
Thank you. I don't have any questions because that would be also extending the time. But I would like to thank you, all the four of you, for these wonderful presentations, both visually and oral. You were so good storytellers, you know. Everyone would understand what you were talking about, and it's such a complex topic, all the four topics, so complex, and you made it so easy to understand and so beautifully presented. So I'm so impressed, and I wanted to express this. Thank you very much.
That was an important comment. Okay, I had a pen here. Where did it fall? I think, the one that I asked about the stakeholders. The other aspect I would like to raise is distribution. How to Africa, India, Norway, EU. What are the challenges concerning the distribution of or effectiveness and diminishing of emissions and so on concerning the batteries? Is this an issue or is it no problem?
Yeah, it is an issue, especially considering emissions, but also with supply chain considerations. We saw when COVID happened, for example, there were supply chain cuts and that created like a lack of raw materials here. So Norway is trying to build the whole value chain here, that's why. And that's why recycling is also really important, so that we can keep the materials in the loop, at least in Norway and EU context. So what we're trying to do in Norway at least is make the whole value chain here, so that we produce raw materials as well and also create the value chain circle.
And more independent.
Yes.
For the world situation and so on. Yeah.
And it's for both emissions and also for geopolitical reasons.
I would like to add to that.
Yes, please.
I think as of now, it's not possible to secure supply for all the materials, for example, within Norway or within EU, because most of the supply in the after processing comes from Asia. And also, I think there should be some sort of kind of scrutiny on the processes that they have there. Because if we say that the EVs are kind of green, but the emissions maybe have happened when they mined or when they process the material, and we don't know what kind of processes are there, for example, in Asia. So there should be some sort of transparency that how they process those materials to get the actual products that they're sending here, for example. So I think in that way only, for example, the mining industries here within EU or in some other countries where they have strict regulations on the emissions will be able to compete.
So this is high-tech secrets. They keep the processes.
I think like most industries, they mostly don't want to share their technology.
Is this competitive between all the world parts and countries on this issue also?
I think I would say so, because the EV transition is kind of happening almost everywhere now and at a very rapid pace, and everyone wants to be the front runner in sort of like making these batteries or giving materials and everything. So yeah, I think there is a lot of competition there.
Just to add to that, so China is considered to be one of the biggest EV adapters and also producers. And in the research community, we do not really know how they're going about things, how they're making things, and what are the business models there, or what is the user perspectives there. So there's a lot of research missing, at least for the Western part, and how are they doing things.
Yes. More hands from audience? No? Yeah? We have here one here.
I wanted to ask a bit about the sustainable business models, because you're going to look into different kind of models. Do you have some way of rating the models against each other, or some kind of checklist on which is the most sustainable, or are you going to compare something like that in your research as well?
For now, we don't have certain kind of checklist to do that, but that's the plan, and it's understanding how is one business model more sustainable than the other, and hopefully when we try to find out what kind of business models are actually existing, we know a few, but there's a problem because most of these business models don't really exist in a commercial phase because these products have not been in the market as of yet. So once we have that kind of detail about how they're performing and what's the details there, then we could actually compare them later on. Yeah. But for now, the problem is that these products or services have not really entered the market as of yet. Yeah.
Okay. I want to give you a challenge. Now we are pretending we are sitting in Brussels. This is the EU Parliament. And you have the chance to give one good, your most important advice. If you could be the one that, and they would do what you say, what will be the most important advice you would give to politicians?
I was thinking I could summarize all the advices that can come from these gentlemen. Yeah, I think if it is related to the what we are working on, then the single advice that I would like to give is how to reduce consumption of batteries, electric car or anything. But how can we reduce consumption?
On the whole scale.
On the whole scale, but starting maybe with having one car versus two cars. That dilemma, two people needing two cars. So how can you reduce consumption, or reduce consumption maybe instead of, you said, an advice. So the advice would be reduce consumption.
Yeah. Would you tell them something? What are the means that could really have effect?
I think in many ways, like if you reduce consumption, what it will affect. Right, that's what you're.
Yeah. Which
I didn't prepare the cell proposition, but I'm thinking right now. I think for politicians sitting in Brussels, I think the important thing is to really show them an example, what would mean. And one thing that could be shown is, for example, that's the drinking water that we have from a mineral water bottle is containing plastic, microplastics, nanoplastics, or whatever. And that is coming a lot because of overconsumption of plastic-based materials over the years. So that's something you could avoid by trying to see or reduce consumption.
Stop in time.
Yeah.
Saad?
So one advice that I can think of is most of the regulations in the EU, at least, is about recycling. Like how can we improve recycling? How can we make it more efficient? But there's very less regulations when it comes to repurposing of the batteries. So as I showed in the slide as well, there would be 350 million units of EV stock coming in, and recycling won't be able to handle that kind of sheer volume of end-of-life batteries. So there's real need to have more stricter regulations when it comes to repurposing, or more defined regulations, because for now they are considered to be really vague. Yeah.
And how will you convince them?
I will show them. I'll show them that how a good business model can work, especially when it considers all the stakeholders aspects and the environmental aspects, and the social aspects. Yeah.
Yeah.
And hopefully
good.
it would work.
Yeah. Good. Leander.
I was actually thinking in the similar lines as Saad, like repurposing, I think is very often coming short in this general end-of-life discussion. And also, of course, for good reason. It isn't always easy to do, and there's a lot of complication, a lot of research also from a technical perspective needed. But I think for the politicians in Brussels, it's really...
Or in Norway.
Or in Norway, everywhere in the EU, at least. I think it's really important to let them know what a valuable resource a battery is, and like how many souls have sort of worked with this, and what consequences it had for becoming as such, and then also trying to see, okay, how can we preserve this for as long as possible, and putting it in a furnace simply is not the right way of doing it, I guess. So that is one thing I would stress, and of course also not only look at things from a very business and technical perspective, the user perspectives are very much key.
Example from Trondheim, as you showed us. Usman?
Yeah. So even though I work in recycling, but the first thing would be about repurposing, so that the recycling industry have enough time to kind of mature and develop to sustainable processes. And also another one would be to secure the end-of-life batteries so that they remain within the EU, so that you have some kind of materials for the industries to actually process in bulk, instead of shipping them off to other regions.
Keeping the lithium and the resources within. Okay. No more hands. There is one, please.
I was more wondering in the lines of sustainable model. Let's say like customers, the users will be one of the key players, and how's the work, at least your research, has it focused how it can motivate users to focus on more repurposed batteries than new batteries? For example, the repurposed batteries lie under somewhere between the capacity of 60 to 80% capacity lines, right? So when the capacity has decreased, the RT, round trip efficiency, which is how much we give in and how much we get out, also decreases. So for example, a customer, for a customer, it would not be very lucrative to pay 100 NOx of energy only to get back 80 NOx of energy or something. So has that been a thought? How's that going to be tackled?
Please, who is feeling like responding?
Yeah, I see this also very much as part of my research, and it's also a general thing that also the price of new lithium-ion batteries are seen to decrease, and then to actually be able to repurpose a battery, it depends a bit on how you do it, but usually it contains a lot of manual work also. You're first opening the battery, you're sorting the cells, taking the good ones out, putting them together in a new thing. So it's a lot of steps, and it also adds a lot of cost, and you also need to ensure safety and so on. So at the end, also when we went to Japan, to this factory, they were actually seeing this and also saying we cannot do this forever, basically, as the price of new lithium-ion batteries declines. So yeah, there is, of course, also a technical thing to this. Can you make it more efficient to repurpose batteries? But also, as you mentioned, for the consumers, okay, what kind of motivations can you work on on this bigger understanding? Okay, how can you prolong the use of these kind of batteries in the long run? And I think this could also link to politics, of course. For instance, we did a lot of interviews with some of the repurposers in Norway. And one thing they also mentioned is that if you repurpose a battery, that could later on also turn really nice in terms of the CO2 tax. Because if you have a new battery, that CO2 thing is really high up. It depends, of course, a bit where it is produced and how and so on. But if you repurpose a battery, then you are sort of prolonging the resources and you have a much less impact of that. So this could also be like a thing to work on for the consumers.
So like a repurposed battery would last 5 to 6 years perhaps, but batteries which are specifically produced for ESS, for ESS energy storage systems, the newer players, they claim 20 years of life. So the price difference is not that substantial between a new battery and also a repurposed battery. So has that been put into thought? Of course, repurposing enables gives more time for the recycling technology to be matured, but also as a customers, people also will think about economics in a way, right?
Yeah.
So, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I can answer this. So basically, if you only focus on the economic aspects, then maybe repurposing won't really come forward as the prime solution. But in business models, we also have this thing called value proposition about how you are trying to solve the problem for the customers. Like, for example, even though Patagonia has really expensive clothes, but they market it in a way, they produce the value proposition in a way that tells the customers or makes them aware that this product is going to last long and it's good for the environment as well. So there's a need to actually produce value propositions and tell the customers that by reusing or repurposing the batteries, you're actually not just saving on economic things, but also producing a value in terms of environmental considerations.
Yeah, Leander.
And also business models, I guess leasing could be a thing. Like you have a provision of a storage solution in your house, and then the cells are sort of managed by a third party that comes and check on the cells and then exchange it, and you pay a monthly fee or something for that solution. So maybe there are models also, like business models, that could make this possible in a sense.
Yeah.
Okay, then I think we have been through a lot of perspectives, developing and rings in the water around what you presented. And I hope that all of us have got now an inspiring reflection and to maybe reflect further on when you're leaving this hall and this live stream. So I will thank all of you, both here in the hall and at the stream, for following us. Especially a big thank you to the PhD candidates, and a really good luck with your projects, because this is important. I'm convinced that all of us really feel deep down. So thank you very much for presenting.